Hi, I'm Lucy, a spiritual life coach.
I'm Cheryl, a fitness and life coach.
Welcome to our podcast,
Find Your Happy.
Every week we discuss different ideas and techniques to help you live a happier, more purposeful life.
So let's get started. So this week we have an extra special guest for you to meet.
We are going to be introducing you to Alex Boianghu. He has been a therapist for over 30 years and he focuses on the unity of body and mind. He's also trained in EMDR, which is a technique used to help people process and resolve trauma successfully.
So let's get started. We just thought we'd start with asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, really.
Oh boy. That's always a loaded question.
Yeah.
When people ask me like, what's your story and who are you, what you do? And I've been fortunate in my life to say that who I am and what I do seem completely inseparable for me. And what I do is the deepest expression of why I'm here. And so I feel very fortunate to be doing the journey that really aligns with me. And that journey is my own deepest coming home to myself, to my deepest aspect of being, if I should say it that way. And then the same journey with people. That's the simplest way that I can summarize who I am. All the other details are irrelevant in a way, you know, my education and what. The most important thing is that I live the life that I do with people.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
That just sounds like the ideal life, the ideal situation.
Yeah, I mean, I have my stuff that comes up and life that happens, and you know, sicknesses, illnesses, this and that. But it's I'm with everything that's happened to me in my life, and a lot's happened. I still say that in that the journey is what really is important, and all those things have made me who I am, have made me realize much deeper aspects of it. So it's like it's perfect as it is.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. That
we can only aspire.
Yeah, that's what we aspire to reach ourselves.
I would definitely say what my day job is and who I am are not aligned at the moment. So hopefully I will get there one day.
Yeah, and I'm slightly aligned in that I get to help people in my day-to-day job. So that slightly aligns, but I need to make a little bit of a shift away from the specific job role that I'm in.
And what I'm speaking about here is not just job, right?
Yeah.
It's really honoring the unfolding of what's most meaningful and really listening to that. And that manifests in everything that we do in our life. And to be honest with you, on a relative level, there might be circumstances in our lives where we cannot do the job due to where we live, due to circumstances in the world, that we may not be able to do the exact expression of who we are. Yet, we still can live that expression while doing that and working our way in other areas of our life to make sure that they fall under the umbrella of our own wholeness and beingness, right? Yeah. So I don't want to paint it as that, you know, if we're not doing exactly, then, you know, it's bad. No, there's a journey to be made.
Yeah. For everybody.
I think it's easy to get caught up in the just literally getting up, going to work, coming home, sorting the kids out, going to bed, doing the same thing over and over every day. But there's definitely better ways to be living, isn't there? As we are going through our own sort of journey, spiritual enlightenment, whatever you want to call it at the moment.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And you can feel that, you know, when you say those words, you can embody and feel those words, and you can feel the movement of that's begging the expression and a creation in that direction. And what happens is when we get busy with our lives, we stop listening to that.
Yeah.
So a meditative life stays very close to the fire of being. And then you with the kids, yeah, still close to the fire. You going to work, you're still close to the fire. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden we have to leave everything. I mean, it's good to do that sometimes to really deepen the contact and then return and live the contact. It takes time. That's a serious dedication.
And investing time in yourself, which I don't think everyone finds that easy to do they?
The modern Western world has been what's the word? Proposed that you have to destroy yourself and work yourself into the grind to then go get rest. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That is the typical way of living, especially here in England. That's what we are told we should be doing, and that's how we're made to aspire to be.
I'd say that's what schools teach, don't they?
Trying to
schools don't teach.
Children.
They schools teach parts, not wholes. In saying all this, just to say this, in saying all this, I want to be very clear that we don't get gloom and doom. Okay. It's really important then to say, okay, here's the circumstances. So we're alive at a time that society looks a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a philosophical, psychological, spiritual momentum, let's say, where we live. We have to take action and put it in our own hands to say, who am I within this context, and do I need to follow it? How do I follow this? Do I do it my own way? Like, I think we have to reclaim and get away from the this sucks all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
very important.
The more you think about how bad your situation is, you're only attracting more negativity, aren't you? So
yes, or listen closely, and we can't artificially look for positives.
Yeah,
I want to be, because that can become a very hokey pokey game too on the spiritual path. Like, oh, I'm going to look at things in a positive way. That can still become a frustration, because if the lens of doubt and insecurity and negativity is still there, even in the artificial, I'm going to look at things positively, doesn't take away from that deep embedded in the body sense of feeling a lack.
Yeah.
So to really see things as they are, and that means neither negative or positive, but as they are.
Yeah.
The whole point of the meditative path is to be present as it is, without the filters of either positivity or negativity, because in as it is, it's going to be clear, it's going to be full of certain qualities that we're not familiar with. And most of all, we're going to feel deeply, deeply content. So I'm not a big, sorry to say this, but I'm not a big hokey pokey into the looking at things positive and framing them that way. That's artificial to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to experience what the now is without any lens.
Very nice. I like that.
No, I get that, because if you're just saying affirmations over and over again to try and be positive, but you're not actually looking at the whole picture, it's not going to work, is it? It has never worked. Yeah.
The positive affirmation field has failed horribly, because
you have to do everything else as well. So what I am really interested to find out more about is EMDR. So could you tell us a bit about what it is and how it helps people?
Sure. It was 2015. Let me back up. In 2007, I went into a private practice with a company in Connecticut, where I was living, and they specialize in addiction. And before that, I was doing therapy for a long, long time, but it wasn't necessarily a specialty in addiction. It was seeing people for a variety of things. But this was really like addiction based. And I walked in and I thought I was prepared, having had many years of experience already, at that point, from 1991, what was like 17, 18 years. I thought, okay, I'm ready for this. What I realized was that the field of addiction, I was not yet familiar with. And I really dove in, and I realized, with the help of other people and working with people, that addiction was due to trauma. And addiction was the extreme version or the extreme representation of what goes on in society as the expression of feeling disconnected, disembodied, traumatized. And I was like, I've got to figure a way to how to help people here. So I myself trained as a somatic psychotherapist using yoga, meditation, breath work, Tibetan yoga, I mean, all the somatic work. And then I realized I need more. And it was EMDR. I did some research and I realized that EMDR at the time that I went to go get trained was the number one used method in the world for trauma treatment. I didn't know that at the time. And so I completed my initial training in EMDR, which was several weekends with an amazing top-level EMDR coach. Then I decided I wanted more, and I completed an additional year, which you don't have to. And I worked with a mentor every week for the whole year and really dug into the understanding of EMDR, how it works, how to use it. And I started using it with everyone, related to everything, not just addiction, but literally anything that you can imagine somebody coming in with. EMDR, plus what else I was doing, was working so effectively. Clients were coming in and leaving within 3 to 6 months of therapy.
Wow.
I could not believe it from people coming in with what I call single incident traumas. Like, for example, let's say you get into a car accident and that trauma gets locked into the body. From that to, you know, the more severe childhood abuse, sexual abuse, and things like this, violence and things like that, right? Those take more time, longer, you know, period. So EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is a term that came out of the work of Francine Shapiro, who started the field of EMDR. She was the discoverer. Now it's a little bit over 25 years. And the story goes that one day she was walking, I think she was walking in the woods in the park somewhere, and she was feeling a little bit anxious, and she noticed that the anxiety went away. And she didn't realize why. And she was reflecting. She noticed that she was looking at the trees left and right bilaterally. Did the bilateral eye movements seem to calm me down? This is kind of like her thought process. And that began the field. And you just can imagine the research and all the literature and the neurobiology. And she developed a whole system for it. And it's been incredible. How does it work? Just so people understand, right? So it doesn't seem. We need to understand the beginnings of trauma to understand how EMDR works. So when we're conceived, one of the first things to develop is our nervous system, right? So our nervous system and our brain is the interface between who we are and the outside world. Just I want you to think about that, right? It's incredible. It's the nervous system. The nervous system is there to decide on what's safe and what's not safe. Simply, that's it. It doesn't have, doesn't have to do another job. It's simply safe or not safe. So the child immediately in utero is experiencing the conditions of the mother and the environment in its nervous system. So immediately that nervous system is taking shape. It's forming to adapt. And it's adaptation. If the environment is safe, the child is like, I can be myself. Yeah, like, all right. We know children that grew up in families where they were just who they were really was honored. Like there was allowed to, to come out. Well, what happens in environments where the environment, the society, the culture, maybe an entire nation, right, where there's a lot of trauma and suppression, maybe war-torn countries, doesn't have to be, it could be simply in the United States or UK, where you grew up in a family where there's addiction, there's violence, there's parents who are embodied themselves. All that starts to create a very uptight nervous system. It's very rigid, and simply then everything that we do, everything that we say, everything that we think is coming out of that trauma. And we live the momentum of the trauma. it's the continuation. It's like an arrow being shot. So then we think we're living our present life, but we don't really understand that we are living the expression of the trauma.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very
very
powerful.
Yeah.
Right? So then we start to think, wait a second, everything in my relationships, everything at work, everything that I interact with, all my thinking and emotions is the expression of that trauma, which has trapped my sense of self and distorted it. And usually we find, not usually, everybody who I meet, there's a perception that there's something wrong with them. There's something lacking within me as an individual. And then what happens is we try to deal with that sense of lack. And how do we deal with it? With every possible way that you can imagine we do, from engaging in relationships, trying to make money, drinking, drugs, alcohol, sex. I mean, every possible way to deal with the trauma and the fact that I'm feeling a sense of lack. EMDR works by allowing memories and the nervous system to calm down and to perceive the truth of what was happening to that child for them. So let me give you an example. I'll make one up. Let's say a child is in the kitchen with their father and mother, and the child is getting a cup of water and they drop it and it breaks, and the father's like, "You're so stupid." In that moment, the child shortens their breathing. First thing that happens, because that energy is an insult to the nervous system. In that moment, the child doesn't think, "Oh, my father is stupid." It's like, it's my fault. I caused this. Therefore, on some level, I deserve it because this has probably been going on with the father in different ways. So it's not just the first time. So it just becomes just a continuation. The child then they don't do this on purpose. The nervous system then traps that sense of something's wrong with me. And then I've got to deal with my father's energy. Maybe I become the good little girl and say, "Daddy, I'm going to clean up and let me clean up everything else." "Oh, you're being a good little girl." Now, all of a sudden, being a good little girl means that's how you get daddy's approval. So I've got to shut myself off, be something else to appease my daddy. EMDR, what it does is then it allows that story to be there, the image of that story to be there, but it relaxes the emotional response. Then everybody who I work with, they end up going, "My goodness, that wasn't my fault." See,
I feel like everyone would need therapy.
Everybody needs that.
everybody. I mean, literally everybody. So then, imagine you're being 25, 35, 45, 50, 75, and you go, for the first time, you realize that was not my fault.
Yeah.
Talk about the transfer. That alone is worth everything.
Yeah.
There's that, and then there's when you're a parent thinking you might have snapped at your own children and then caused trauma. I know.
Yeah.
Look, it's easy to become neurotic about this stuff, right? The best thing to do is to continue resolving that sense of lack.
Yeah.
And coming home to ourselves.
Yeah.
Then we'll be the best parents we can, and no child goes into their adult years unscathed with some conditioning that we've put in. So let's not be foolish to think that there's a utopia of unscathed conditioning. No, everybody gets conditioned. It's just being human. Yeah. That's it.
So, well, I don't know anyone that's had therapy.
No, it's not. It's not as.
I don't know if it's a UK thing that
not as widely used in the UK. I think we tend to refer to it as counselling, which is a different process from therapy anyway.
Yes.
So it's not as widely known here in the UK.
Which is such a shame, because when you hear, like, America, for example, is very much encouraged that, like you said, everyone's probably got something in their past that you need to resolve, whether whatever happened, whether it was at school with your parents, whether it was a trauma, you need to make peace with yourself and realize, it wasn't, you didn't do anything wrong per se.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you because I think you have clients from all over the world, people from all over the world that come to you.
All over the world.
Do you get many people from the UK get in contact with you?
A lot.
So maybe we just don't talk about it then. There might be
repress.
Usually people find me, you know, through some, you know, word of mouth with other people who've seen me in the UK, and then people who, you know, have had, you know, interactions with the NSA and who were told that they need to go to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is seems to be the only option to deal with the panacea of everything that's going on with you. And once that fails, the people are like, I need to go to the private sector and find someone, and that's when I usually come in, you know.
Okay. I think that's all they offer our NHS 6 free counselling
6 free.
which is CBT.
I know the system. I know the system.
Too well. How would you say that psychology and spirituality relate to each other?
Yeah. People ask me that question all the time. In the West, psychology has been based on the notion that I exist as a mind, not as an embodied being. Spirituality has the philosophical, and not only philosophical, but lived experience that I am an embodied being. So where psychology fell short was working with the mind. Well, the mind is not who I am. The mind is simply the experience of all of my learned information. That's not who I am. So for me, spirituality and psychology are simply a spectrum of development. And so I actually even let those two words go. And I use the following analogy. Imagine at an early age, I started to wear a jacket, okay? And it's really zippered up really tightly. And then over time, it just doesn't fit me anymore, and it's still tight. And I know it's not who I am, but I still continue to wear it and so forth. Then eventually I realized I need to do something about it. So the movement from psychology to spirituality, if you want to have it that way, is it's the recognition that I am not this jacket, and I'm going to slowly unzipper it and let it go. Everything that we often relate to psychology is the jacket. And what we relate to in spirit is we say that is which is free of the jacket. But the thing is this, as human beings, we still are going to work with our conditionality. It doesn't go away, but it depends on from what perspective. If I embody my fullness, then I could live my life within the human conditionality and see it through the lens of the embodiment, versus I'm disembodied and I'm a thinking mind trying to become whole. It's not going to work. So psychology has changed over the years, especially with the work of Carl Jung. And Carl Jung's work basically said in his opus magnus, that there are 4 stages of development, and the last stage of development is that the ego, or the psychological self, is in the service of the spiritual self. For him, that was the highest level of development. So psychology and spirituality, in the West it's psychology, in the East it's been spirituality, and now they've come together, and everybody's trying to figure out how do they all come together. And in the West, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use spirituality to support our own psychology, which is really interesting, right? Mm. So we still want to be like, I want to use these things, but I'm going to still stay disembodied. And then we take, we kind of pick and choose these small little pieces we think are going to work, but no, because there's a lack of deep understanding of who am I and why am I here and what to do. So, we need psychology to keep going in a direction. It's improving. There's a lot of change that's been happening, a lot of really good change. The transpersonal psychology field, the existential psychology field, the embodied somatic psychology field has really brought us into the forefront. All of the new somatic therapies that have grown in the last 20 years have really changed psychology. So in a positive way, we have taken the East and we've homegrown new methods that the East needs from us. Yeah. So good things are happening.
Yeah. For our listeners, would there be anything or a book, or other than obviously coming to yourself, anything you would recommend that they could do to start them on that path?
To find out who they are?
Yeah.
The self-help book field is billions of dollars big, right?
Yeah.
And Every Joe and Schmo is writing a book and putting it on the shelf on the 7 steps to help yourself, the 3.5 steps to help yourself, the 17 steps of undoing this. I mean, everybody has written a book with different numbers and the quickest roads to this and the 4 statements that you tell yourself and you become enlightened. It's full of a lot of crap. Okay? Sorry, I'm very honest about this kind of stuff.
It's good.
So in order to suggest a book, it has to match the person in their worldview, and it has to touch them deeply. So I have my set of, let's say, my top 5 books that I would say, I've had a library of, let's say, 500 books in my life. Mm-hmm. If I took all 500 and I said and take the top 5, those top 5 for me have been transformative in my life. But if I tell you the top 5, for another person, they're gonna be like, they don't make any sense. I don't get it, or it doesn't work for me. So I'm sorry to answer it that way. But I would start to tell people, start reading and let the reading and talk to someone. Yeah, and talk to someone. I mean, I really suggest to share with someone what you're reading and what you're exploring. There are people who are becoming interested in this kind of things. Book groups, online people are starting to get together when this blows over, getting together through meetups and talking to people about these kind of things. Then people are gonna be like, try this book. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
So
I think just the concept of you're not your mind is pretty mind blowing to me.
Yes.
And I'd say
I am. You are not your thinking.
Yeah. I've only recently read about that, to be honest. I've only recently come to grips with that, but that is a bit of a game changer, I'd say. It makes you look at
there's a lot of people who are writing about this. Mm-hmm. And it belongs more into the category of like the East-West psychology books that are being, for example, Mark Epstein's book, Thoughts Without a Thinker, was incredible. This was an early book from over 25 years ago, probably still an incredible book to read for anyone who wants to understand thoughts without a thinker. That's incredible, And if you put his book into Amazon, and then you'll start to see people making comments on other books that are similar to that, I would do it that way if that's something that draws you,
If you didn't have much money and you couldn't afford to go to a therapist, but you wanted to start this journey or try and live a happier life, try and be less stressed, where would you start? Would you start with like meditation or something like that?
If you're on your own, and you really are not, let's say, connected to something, look, it's hard to uncondition yourself, because you're gonna try to uncondition yourself through the methods by which you become conditioned. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
that's true. Yeah.
The way I'm perceiving then is an attempt to unperceive myself. Yeah. So it's a bit tricky in that way.
Yeah.
I would say, to answer that question, one is breathing. Let me start with the power of breath, where you don't need to go to a therapist. Learning how to breathe correctly into the whole body, into the whole system, does an incredible job of calming the nervous system down. We all need to create more calm nervous systems. Mm-hmm. And remember something, thoughts and emotions arise out of the nervous system. So watch this. If the nervous system is agitated, thoughts and emotions are agitated.
Yeah.
If the nervous system is calm, thoughts and emotions are calm. That should tell you immediately, like, wait a second, that's quite incredible. So therefore, I am not my thoughts. Let me examine the nervous system. What's happening there? Yeah. So breathing, yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, all of these arts that have to do with calming the nervous system, becoming embodied, which then allows you to examine yourself in a more loving, kind way. Those are great, steps to do. Those you can do by yourself, probably to some degree, until you may run up into walls where you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it. I need someone from the outside to, figure that out,
Yeah. So if someone wanted to start dealing with their issues, what is referred to as shadow work, would you always suggest that is done with a therapist? Because I know there's guided meditations on YouTube where you can do this stuff yourself, but that type of thing where you are going to be bringing up thoughts about, past traumas and stuff, is that opening a can of worms? Should you go to a therapist, would you say?
Shadow work is basically visiting that which has been repressed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That which has been repressed has a lot of power and energy to it, and it feels as though it has an identity to itself, and we're being impinged by that energy. That energy is not a demon or a monster or anything. It's simply the energy that was formed during trauma, and it became turned on ourselves, as I said before. That then gets suppressed into the shadow, another way of saying it, into the unconscious. So then what happens, then we go to do the work and we say, okay, I'm going to listen to something on YouTube. And then all of a sudden, the guided meditation opens you up and opens up that door, and you haven't been prepared.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared. You have to know how to work with that material, or it easily can become very overwhelming, very quick. And then you can also shut it down really fast, and then it just re-traumatizes the whole process, right? So you have to learn and be ready. It's like mountain climbing. You got to get ready to go mountain climbing.
Yeah.
So shadow work is, you got to be prepared. And in good therapy, the therapist will help support the client in the unfolding, steps of how to work with that right in the session. And that's what happens. And then the client feels safe. If they feel unsafe, then we use certain methods to help them deal with that right there. And then they learn. And after learning it for 3 to 6 months, then they can go work on their own shadow stuff. Mm-hmm. No problem.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Actually, we had a quick question about how do you deload? How do you switch off? After a therapy session with somebody, how do you yourself then not take on board those feelings, not take on board other people's emotions?
Sure. I don't deload afterwards, because I've been committed in my life to experience my own groundedness and being. And from that stance, I don't take people's stuff on because it doesn't belong to me.
That's good. We both need help with that.
Yeah.
And I would say in the younger part of my career, I would take it on all the time, and now I'm a little bit more mature in my own development, my own practice. It's easier. And now look, I can't say that, all week long there are certain clients and certain stories that just like, oh wow, that's rough.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm unmoved or I'm cold and distant. It's that for the most part, I'm able to allow what happens without it becoming mine.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just painful from a human perspective to, witness and hear what goes on. And what I do with that, there are many things you can do with that. You can hold a loving heart space for what comes up, and allowing a lot of room. I call it giving it room. So, and what's interesting is the more you're embodied, you don't bleed out to the other person. The key is not to lose your sense of self, to go to the other person. The tendency with therapists, like something's going on with the client and they leave themselves to go towards the client. No, you have to stay centered within your own being.
Mm-hmm.
Then that allows you to actually be present without picking it up. So it's a particular way of being there. And then, of course, I meditate a lot. I do my own yogic practices. I do all those things that help me not to get bound up.
I've got a random one for you. If Okay, thinking about like people that develop clairvoyance and they can hear spirits or speak to spirits, does that get when they are first developing that gift, does that get confused with, oh, like mental health issues, schizophrenia, something like that? Do you see that much in your industry?
I don't particularly work with schizophrenia or the psychosis realm, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of clairvoyance, that's something that each one of us can actually develop. So I don't want to put that into some kind of spiritual mysticism. Mm-hmm. It actually arises out of the clarity of who I am. And then by nature, we're going to be able to perceive information that was not perceptible while we were still very dense in our ability to perceive, you see. So I'm not crazy even about the word clairvoyance, right?
Yeah.
I think it's about a deep knowing and an intuition that we can perceive. And it's not magical. I actually believe that it's quite natural.
I recently read a lot about detoxifying the pineal gland to help along with that process. And I'm also thinking about detoxifying water. Have you come across that?
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff out there now.
Yeah.
I have my perceptions. But if we look at the pineal gland, where is the pineal gland sort of say located? It's located in the sixth chakra. So it's not the gland it's per se. Let's talk about, like, the gland is the physical manifestation right next to the sixth chakra. Mm-hmm. So if we're cleansing the pineal gland, I would say more so open up the sixth chakra and seventh chakra. It's going to do the same thing just by breathing and embodying the sixth and seventh chakra and clearing the baggages out of that. You're going to get the results that one is looking for. You don't need to go, I need to clean out the pineal gland.
Yeah.
Whatever is physically manifest, by the way, is already the expression of the subtle body. Clear out the subtle body, then what is manifest will be clearer. It's like so funny that we do it the other way. It's a very still a separation between body and mind. You know what I mean? It's like, like I'm a solid body, so therefore I'm going to go clean the pineal gland and I'm going to have wisdom.
What do you mean when you say cleansing water?
There was a lot of reports about the water in the UK is filled with all sorts of chemicals, mm-hmm. which can collect, so to speak, mm-hmm. and cause issues in the pineal gland.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could be causing issues anywhere. I mean, in Greece here, I had to get a water filter because they have a lot of chlorine, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of that.
Yeah, so the issue is not that it's going to directly impact my wisdom and my pineal gland. It's just going to be toxic to my entire body. I mean, so I'd be very careful of a lot of people selling a lot of things very quickly and trying to make a lot of money on things. Yeah. So especially now that spirituality is exploding, everybody wants to being like, drink this and you're going to have enlightenment.
Yes.
$1.99 at your local grocery store and you got it. Ignore all the the great masters and teachers and students who spent 20,000 hours or more meditating, but you can get this all here.
Yeah.
I know we've spoken about shadow work, but I did also want to touch on shame. So do you have any tips for our listeners on how to work through shame? Is there anything they can do at home to start working on this? And I suppose what is shame to you? How do you explain that?
Remember what I said to you, what happens with trauma? Trauma creates that there's something wrong with me. Well, what happens when we experience that there's something wrong with me? What's the next two emotions that are going to come up? Shame and guilt. So do you need to work with shame and guilt, or do you need to work with the fundamental experience of not feeling whole? Our work is to return back to our embodied being, where there is no longer any any negative experience about ourselves, which then has no shame or guilt. Shame and guilt are the shadows of, just like having a tree. If you have a tree, then you have the shadow. If you don't have a tree, you don't have a shadow.
Yeah.
Well, what's the tree? What's the tree? There's something fundamentally wrong with me. I'm lacking. There's a lack ontologically with me, and therefore that produces the shame and guilt. And what do? I need to work on my shame and guilt. And how do you work on shame and guilt? To do what?
Well, I've read books on.
You have to resolve. You have to resolve.
I read the wrong book, didn't I?
No, I'm sure there's good self-help books, but I'd like to hear from people when they read those books if it really lets them resolve the shame.
Yeah. Okay, here's a random question for you. You're further along your journey, as you said. So if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Trust.
Yourself or other people?
Trust that as life is unfolding, that you can relax and see and figure out what you need to figure out in the way that it's unfolding, not somebody else's life, not some other circumstance. It's like right there, right in the living of your life is the opportunity to be whole. Right there, not somewhere else, not down the road, there, in that moment, in that space, in that time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm writing that down.
Yeah. Oh, you're very wise. We can
Yeah.
learn so much from you just in this 45 minutes. So.
Yeah, there's a lot. We're still, I would say, young in our journey into
definitely.
this. So there's a lot that we want to cover ourselves over the next lifetime.
Yeah.
In doing these podcasts, people are asking me all these different questions. What I think people don't realize is all these questions are not separate from the one answer. You see, so what ends up happening is when clients come into my office, they're like, oh, it's this problem, then it's this problem. No, it's not those different problems. Those problems that are perceived as different problems are simply the doorways to recognize that I'm still operating from an unconscious conditional way, and that I must return and heal that to return back home. Therefore, it's not that you guys are young in this journey. It's more that the major aha to have is that there's not a lot of things going on. It's simply, I'm having homesickness. And homesickness shows up in all these different ways. So how do I resolve being homesick? Come back to the body, come back to your embodiment, come back to your wholeness. Then all the questions that you have will be answered by the one answer. There's only one answer. There's not many answers, and there's not many problems. There's just one problem. That's it.
That's amazing. So, you just gave me goosebumps.
So if you can operate from that stance, then you don't have to worry about being young and discovering a lot of things. You'll discover on how to become clear and understanding what I mean by that, meaning that as the hologram is expressing itself, meaning that the way that life is expressing itself, and you go, that is expressing the conditioning. That's wait a second. All of this is a theme. It's a theme. They're not different themes. It's one theme. Homesickness.
I like that, homesickness. We've got to find our way home.
You are home, right here, right here, right now.
Yeah.
Just by breathing, settling into the body, feeling that you're everywhere in the body all at once. Stepping back away from thinking and emotion sensations, giving them some room. Here we are, right now, right here, we're home. Not someplace later, not somehow else, here.
That was beautiful.
It was. I felt very emotional then.
Yeah, I felt very relaxed actually. We'd like to thank you very much for your time. It has been truly inspirational for both of us.
Definitely inspirational. You should definitely write a book. No, I'm joking. About
That's in the plan, actually. It's in the works.
Well, let us know, because we would definitely be interested to read that, wouldn't we?
Yes.
In the next year or two. I'll actually plug somebody's book who I really, really love. And I would say, like, you know, I'm circling back around to what you had asked me.
Yeah.
There's a woman by the name of Sherry Huber, Huber. And she writes beautifully. And it's written almost in a kid's form.
Yeah.
And my favorite book by her, it's called There's Nothing Wrong with You.
Even the title sounds good.
Yeah.
That book alone is priceless. If people read that and really grasp the meaning of that book, it's incredible how far along they can get just in the deep understanding of the ideas and the practices that are within there. So
Thank you very much for the recommendation.
Yeah,
of course.
Yes.
Of course.
No, that's been brilliant. It's been amazing to meet you. Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you very much.
And thank you. I love this process, and anytime you guys want to chat again,
definitely. We definitely want to.
We'll do it again.
Yes.
Brilliant.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Let us help you continue getting your shit together. Subscribe to the podcast to catch every episode.
And look out for our mini-sodes where we discuss the ridiculous things we've done over the years on our own quest for happiness.
Follow us on Instagram at FindYourHappyOfficial.
Catch us on TikTok at FindYourHappyOfficial.
And we have a Facebook page
called Find Your Happy Official. Until next time,
stay happy.